Hey, good afternoon. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. Most of us got some kind of green on. So, welcome to the March 17, 2022 Flathead City County Board of Health. So with that, we usually have a call to order, then roll call attendance, please.
Artis here. Annie
Here.
on
Here.
Jessica here. Pam
Here.
Pete Rod
Here.
Roger.
Yes. Okay, I guess everybody's here except for Dr. Pete Haybar. With that, I guess we have an agenda in front of us, the changes, modifications to the agenda, or can I have a motion to approve as is?
We'll make that motion to approve the agenda.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as provided. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Carried. With that, we're moving on to citizen comment. So I just want to remind everybody that all of the board members are voluntarily board members, and the staff works really hard here. And we're all neighbors, and we need to be respectful and courteous of each other. And I hope you follow that. And we will allow 3 minutes for public comment. We had quite a number of written comments to review and appreciate those. So we generally start with the audience, and then we'll move to those people that are online. And so if you would like to step to the podium, give us your name and address. Remember, you have 3 minutes.
We also have a fan note. Thank you for allowing me to address. My name is Krista Bourne. I'm an original founder, past board member, and current volunteer of the Flathead Spay Neuter Task Force of 3491 Trumbull Creek Road. I'll refer to it as a task force. The task force is a 20-year-old, as of March 14th of this year, 20-year-old nonprofit organization that spays and neuters dogs and cats at low cost for low-income families, other nonprofit animal organizations, and feral cats. I myself have rescued over 200 cats in the 27 years I have lived in this city, with 39 of those ferals coming from Scotty's Bar and Grill in Cullen, just over here last year alone. That was a lot of work. The task force also provides occasional minor and life-saving surgeries, vaccinations, treats parasites, and grooms animals brought in for sterilization, and all but the vaccines are at no cost. Our operating capital comes from donations, bequeathments, grants, lots of small fundraisers, and surgery fees. Before you, you have a picture of Stash the cat and his family. What's significant about Stash is that he is the 50,000th animal our clinic has sterilized in over 20 years of service to this community. Because of the Flathead Spay Neuter Task Force, for the most part, our community is free of problem strays, communicable zoologic diseases, and has allowed taxpayer to keep more of the money, their money in their pockets. As well, our local shelter, which comes under the management jurisdiction of this health board, has basically become a no-kill shelter. Something citizens of a community always feel proud of. The reason I share this information with the health board today is number one, to inform you of who we are, what we do and offer this community, and what we've done for this community. Secondly, to steal some of the kudos bestowed upon the Flathead Animal Shelter and the Humane Society as well. In large part, they look good because of our efforts and accomplishments, and specifically because of the contributions of over 100,000 volunteer hours nonprofit. Today, I'm excited, proud, and impressed at what five gals sitting around the table 20 years ago decided to do and has made happen. We faced much criticism, undermining, and resistance to reaching this milestone. So members of this board, you are more than welcome and invited to visit one of our monthly clinics. We hold 4 cat clinics and 2 dog clinics every month. And come and see what we do and speak with our executive director, Mimi Beatles, and rejoice in our accomplishments. On the back of your handout, you have some statistics of what we've accomplished as well. I want to thank you for your time today, and I want to leave you with this thought, that when you count sheep tonight, when you go to sleep, envision what 50,000 cats and dogs really looks like. Thank you.
Thank you. It's quite a milestone, 50,000.
Very.
Yeah, that's impressive, and we very much appreciate your contribution to the community. Yeah, so we're going to have the timer here so people can see how much time they have left. I know in the Board of Adjustment meetings, people are often surprised, even board members, at how long they talk. And so just as a reminder, everybody gets 3 minutes. Your name and address.
Okay, my name is Thomas Millette, Marion, Montana. That's M-I-L-L-E-T-T. You know, there's an old saying, repetition is the mother of all learning. So with the intent of being repetitious, I came here last month and told you this, and I'll tell you again, well, not tell you, I'll give you my thoughts on what I want in a new health officer. I want a new health officer that doesn't push treatments on the public, doesn't dictate public health, but simply provides recommendations to us, doesn't infringe on our freedoms and liberties to assemble and do what we want, regardless of epidemics, pandemics, or any so-called other dire health emergency that may mysteriously and coincidentally appear during election years. We are adults, we take responsibility for ourselves, we don't need or want elected or appointed servants to tell us what to do. What we want is someone who will give us good information so that we can make our own decisions. We also want someone who is willing to spend some money to educate the public on how to live a healthy lifestyle before having to seek help from a broken allopathic medical system. I also want to take this time to respond to a few comments made by a certain board member at the end of the last meeting. I will not point this member out because that's not necessary. This member made the following comments, something to the effect of, quote, several people are speaking to the same issue repeatedly. It's only the vocal minority that is doing this, and you mentally shut down when this happens. Firstly, don't assume that just because a few people come to this meeting and say the same thing, that it's just the vocal minority. In case you didn't know, most people are terrified to speak in public, and it's only the brave few who have the guts to do it. A good number to use to figure out how many people feel like the speaker is speaking for them is for every person who gets up to speak, you can basically consider that's 100 people that stands behind them. That's a good measure. Second, when you say these things, like people bring up the same issues, it's only a vocal minority. What the people hear is that if the topic is repeated more than once, then you don't care what people have to say. Then, ironically, you wonder why people get uncivil and raise their voices in these meetings. Perhaps it's because you refuse to listen. I don't know. Remember, we can see you when you're here, and your body language is very telling. Third, most people who come here are taking valuable time out of their day to come speak with you. Most are new at this. Public speaking isn't in their wheelhouse, and I'm sure a few are terrified to get up here and talk. If you don't want to tune in and listen to what each individual in the community has to say, repeat topic or not, then perhaps you should resign your position and let someone else who will listen to the people who show up to make comments and who does care about the health of the community to take the place. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Millet.
My name is Gina Gosnell, and I live in Marion, Montana. And Tom just touched on a subject I was going to touch on, so we'll be repetitious. At the start of the meeting last month, Pam stated that we, and I assume she's meaning the health board, are here to listen. At the end of the meeting, one of the board members, and I don't know who you are because I wasn't here, and it's hard to tell on the video, stated that the people that are showing up are not the majority of the valley, and he can't accept that, and that we are a vocal minority, and that we speak on the same items, and that we do not speak for the valley. Well, we're showing up. We're here to tell you what we think and what we want to see. So what we have to say is important, and it should be listened to, and it should be taken into account in your decisions. You serve the whole community, the ones that show up and the ones that don't, the ones that comment and the ones that are silent. So those comments are very reminiscent of being censoring people and trying to keep them quiet. And that's not going to happen. So maybe we should refrain from making those comments. Even the people that make comments and do them online, those people are important too. There was a lady here last month who was very aggressive and disruptive and being very hateful. But her views are important too. She should be heard as well, as much as she was kind of being rapid. So I was also dismayed during the meeting last month about the mosquito control program that was voted on and implemented, as only one member asked about the chemicals that were being used in that program, and yet everybody voted except for that one person who has abstained from the vote. That's concerning because I go to restaurants here in town and I'm exposed to whatever chemicals are sprayed. And so the fact that nobody else asked about that or wanted to verify that those didn't have any harmful side effects is concerning. Also, I want to make sure that when the landowners are notified, are they given a list of side effects for those chemicals on their livestock, their pets, and themselves? Because if they're not given those side effects, that's not informed consent. So I want to make sure that those landowners get that information as well. Thank you.
Dennis Gomez, I reside in Kalispell. I'm going to present these to the clerk. I'd like you to make copies of all this and give it to every one of these board members. I would like them to read it and educate themselves. It's from the Wisconsin Christian News, and I have met the publisher. There's one story that I forgot to bring that I was going to read some paragraphs of it, but it tells about chemicals that are in these vaccines, what they do, and they're no good. It's poison. The hospitals, the article is, do not go to the hospital. That's what it is. The story is basically gives stories for people that went into the hospital, that got vaccinated and died in the hospital because of the vaccination. It also tells stories of the people that made it out of the hospital and what they went through with the nurses and doctors and the administrators in those hospitals. This is all around the country, not just here, but it's happening here at Logan. We have a travel nurse that brings her little dog to our house when she's on her shift. And she's told us that most of the people in there have been double jab, triple jab, and got COVID. Why? Because those shots are giving those people the COVID in the different variants. Some of them are dying. Some of them are coming out. Some of them are coming out with side effects. But it's not published in the newspaper because of the daily interfake news and the Beacon. They don't give us any news. They give us fake news. And anybody that here follows Joe is demonized. And Joe, you're a demon snake. Thank you.
I'm gonna remind everybody, if there's one more derogatory comment made, we're gonna shut the meeting down and move on for no public, we're just gonna discontinue public comment. So keep it civil.
I'm Diana Southard, I'm from Marion. I am here today. I wanted to let the board member know, Don, who said he couldn't understand why we come in and say the same things repeatedly. It's because we love you. It's not because we hate you. People that love, they tell the truth. And it turns out that a righteous judge by the name of Mark Pittman forced Pfizer BioNTech to release 39 pages of the documents that they want to keep concealed until the year 2096, hiding from view from the public, that they are undergoing a medical experiment. These documents prove and show that there has been an ongoing safety issues and that they are just documenting it. And that their conclusion says that there's no concern over these things. And as the data grows, that they'll just basically keep records of this experimentation. What has happened in the meantime is a bunch of people have been under the illusion that these have been authorized as safe and effective. Now, it's an experiment, a safe and effective experiment, but they left that word out intentionally. The magnitude of underreporting is just basically unknown. These documents themselves even give you that. I will be entering those into the record today. I want to let you know that from December until of 2020 until February 28th of these 3 months, that there was basically just innumerable amounts of problems, including spontaneous miscarriages, blood clots, heart problems, GI problems, people actually getting the disease and with problems with their lungs, their nervous system, and even having drug interactions. These things have not been tested. We just don't know what they are. So for our county to go out and endorse having these, and I'm glad that we don't have the clinics, I believe, anymore at the fairgrounds, but are still giving them away. I really believe that the county is now may be responsible, and each and every one of you may also be responsible in the event of lawsuits. There's no coverage covering you or the bonds that you may hold to be able to hold these public offices. So I just want to thank you for your time today. The consideration of this is completely serious. We don't come in here just to be combative. We come here because we want the truth to be known. And sometimes repetition is the only way to get through to some of our thick skulls. I know because I have one myself. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is what I'm going to enter in. Thank you. I also uploaded it into the record online.
Before I get started, I'd like to request 4 minutes. The first speaker was given 4
No, you
minutes
get
and
3
10
minutes.
seconds. Are you gonna
Our
discriminate
limit
against
is
me?
3 minutes. That's it.
She got 4 minutes and 10 seconds.
3 minutes.
My name's Sean Pandina. I'm speaking about the same document, the cumulative analysis of post-authorization adverse events. I'm gonna go as fast as I can here. I'm gonna hit on the highlights. Yes, this is a 90 days, the first 90 days of being released. And admittedly, in this document, Pfizer admits reports are submitted voluntarily and the magnitude of the underreporting is unknown. Due to the overwhelming amount of reports, Pfizer has taken multiple actions to help alleviate large increase of adverse events reported. This includes significant technology enhancements, process workflow solutions, as well as increasing the number of extra data entry processing colleagues. The first 90 days, the number of adverse reports were 42,086. 1,223 of those were fatal reports. Moving on. and this document, I hope you all read it. It's been entered in. Anaphylactic shock, 9 people died from that. Vaccine-associated enhanced disease, 38 people died from that. Use in pregnancy, 23 spontaneous abortions, premature births were 5, and then there was also 2 neonatal deaths of a pair of twins. Very sad indeed. The cardiovascular cases, 1,403 adverse events reported, 136 were fatal. Blood issues, hematological, 932 cases, 34 were fatal. Liver issues, 70 cases reported, 5 were fatal. Autoimmune disorders, 1,050 reported, 12 were fatal. Neurological events, 501, 16 were fatal. Other events, 8,115, 96 were fatal. Renal, which is kidney failure, 23 of those were fatal. Respiratory, 130 cases, 41 were fatal. Thrombotic events, 151 were reported, 18 were fatal. Strokes, 275 of those, 61 were fatal. Vascular events, 32, 1 of those was fatal. And there's a complete list of the adverse reactions in this. It's 9 pages of single-spaced, 9 pages. 9 pages of adverse events that this causes. This is poison. This should not be given out by our county. There's proof from Pfizer. This was released by a judge. They were trying to hide this until the year 2096. Why do you think they're trying to hide it? It's poison. It's killing people. It's an experiment. Please stop experimenting on the citizens of this county and just refuse to hand it out in your clinics or to even hand it out anywhere. Like the liability is way too high for this county, because when you get sued, we all get sued. Taxpayers will end up paying the bill, and that's not fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you for all those statistics.
If I could just say
Yeah.
something. You leaned over to me and asked me a question, and I would like to put that on the record. Because I've been accused of being notes that aren't been put on the record. So he asked me if he had stated his name
I didn't
on the
picture
record, Sean Pendy.
Sean.
I just,
Yeah, the-
yeah, and I said, yes, he did. So, just saying.
SHAUN.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't catch it. All right.
Hello, I'm Jake Kirby. I'm from Columbia Falls here. I've spoke before. And, you know, I've got a little bit fired up. I talk to a lot of people here in our valley and even across the United States, you know, I've got friends and family, like everybody does. We see what's going on. You know, our country, we're upside down right now. Us as citizens, and I know some of you don't like hearing it. It seems pretty obvious, but some of you, you know, seem to be paying attention. I hope you are. I love my country, and I think most of the people that are showing up to speak as guests here, we love our country. We're confused. We don't know what to do. We're being lied to. There's in so many ways, it's obvious that we're being lied to. And you folks are our elected officials. You know, you're on our health board. You're making big decisions for our family, our friends, our loved ones. I know a lot of people that have taken this jab, and I know, you know, quite a few people that have taken the booster shots. And I've got one close friend, a couple. They recently got married, and they took the jab because his wife's family, he had to fly out of town to go visit her family. Now they had lost their baby miscarried. Now that happens, but you know, it doesn't happen over and over and over like we're seeing today. I mean, healthy people. There's a lot going on, and you guys might say, "Oh well, we'll just excuse it. Oh, that's just, you know, that has nothing to do with the jab." But we have proof now. We have proof. This really is not a good thing. I love all of you guys. I want to. I mean, we may disagree, but we are all brothers and sisters, you know, in Christ's eyes. I don't know if you guys believe in God, but I call you, please, if you don't, you need to find Christ and do the right thing. this is what's going on in our country is not, it's just not good. So let's come together and please just turn to God. Let's be honest with one another. We shouldn't be hating one another. We just need to do the right thing. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby.
Hello, my name's Jessica Kirkendall. I'm still here as a volunteer children's health advocate, as well as for parental rights and enriched education. I'm sure hoping that this political dysfunction here ends soon. I would like to request an update from the health board about from the entire health board, a transparent update about the health officer recruitment process. I know the window closed on Sunday, and I'm hoping that we can get some information about how many applicants, as well as the general profiles without disclosing personal information, of course, for the applicants. I keep hearing that drugs aren't promoted or advertised with this board, yet I keep seeing them constantly promoted in the media. I was so disappointed this week that advertisement came out about the flu shot, and health decisions should be left between each citizen's preferred provider and licensed doctors that have taken the Hippocratic oath to do no harm. This week, the flu shot was pushed as not just for high-risk populations, but on healthy pregnant women, as well as our youngest, 5-year-olds and under 2. The last time I researched the flu shot, it was less than 18% effective, missing the current strains and loaded with toxins. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sue. I'm a resident of Flathead County. And I want to thank you all for the time you take to volunteer on this board. I'm here to just say that I would like to remind each of you, as members who represent this community.
Time.
Oh, it's not. As members of this board who represent this community, please keep this in mind for every decision we make and vote upon. Always consider the oath that you have signed to the Constitution of the United States and Bill of Rights and the state of Washington. Your decision should always support these freedoms, not individual political bias. For those of you who claim to stand for freedom and liberty, your default and first option should never be to tread on a freedom. It's your job to defend our natural rights, which are protected and not granted by government. It's not your job to favor and impose dictated mandates. And it's not your job to keep me or anyone else in your jurisdiction safe.
Yeah.
I have a quick comment. This is my first time to this meeting. My name is Joe Moore and I live here in Kalispell, Montana. And I want to say that I'm an example that I did my research. I went out, I've taken both the shots and the booster, and I'm planning on the 4th later on. And I want to say that personally, I know 5 people who have died who did not get the vaccine. And I reviewed the statistics, and from my perspective, overall, getting the vaccine is a benefit. There's all sorts of misinformation out there, and I think some of the people speaking here are biasing their perspectives and their opinion and cherry picking out data. That's just not true. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Are there any other comments in the audience? Anyone else would like to provide a comment? Okay, thank you for your comments today. With that, we will move on to the online people. Our timer went dead, the battery went dead, so I'll never fail.
I've got this really fancy thing right
Yeah,
here.
I got one too. So I use my stopwatch every once in a while, so I'll use it and give people a heads up. So anyway, Janelle.
So the first one for Zoom is Wilson. If you are on, can you please unmute yourself?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, if you could state your name and address.
My name is Debbie Wilson and I'm from Kyla. Madam Chair and Health Board members, please consider a candidate to replace Joe Russell, who understands the values of the local people and understands that each person is responsible for their own health care. We do not need someone to push the narrative in order to secure state or federal funding. The narrative cannot be pushed long enough or loud enough to make us believe it. We do not need a health officer that simply requires that we comply with CDC guidelines. People are responsible for their own health care. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson.
Next one is Melissa Jones. If you are online, can you please unmute yourself? Melissa? The next one is Sherilyn DeVries. Can you please unmute yourself?
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Sherilyn DeVries. I live in Kalispell and I am speaking on behalf of Love Lives here in the Flathead Valley. So health board members, thank you for the opportunity to make public comment. I know that meetings have been very difficult lately due to disruptions from supporters of Flathead Liberty Coalition and Ammon Bundy's People's Rights Group. Public participation is a really good thing, but we also need decorum. The hostile and combative behavior coming from these groups is a page right out of the playbook of violent extremist Ammon Bundy. Just this week, Bundy called for his followers to intimidate police officers and child protective service officials at their homes. And it is clear that local supporters of Ammon Bundy and Flathead Liberty Coalition are trying to use the same kind of intimidation to force you to make decisions that are based in anti-government and pro-militia beliefs, not long-standing public health research. It is frustrating to see that board member Annie Vokacek is involved with these attacks on the health board. We can see that this behavior is meant to impede your work and make meetings difficult so that people from the community don't feel safe to attend in person. People have the right to get their medical information from their own trusted health providers, not from propaganda that informed consent advocates are trying to force on us. Local officials should also not be expected to deal with threats and intimidation as a normal part of their jobs. So thank you to you all for the work that you are doing. Thank you to Joe Russell for his work. Please choose a health officer who believes in fact-based science. And I just want to say that there are so many people in the community that are deeply sorry that you are facing this situation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. DeVries. Next, Janelle.
The next one is Patty Harmon. If you are online, please unmute yourself. That's the last one.
All right. Well, thank you all for your public comment today. Interesting issues. So with that, we will move on to the approval of the minutes of the February 17th board meeting. Does anyone have any revisions, modifications, changes to that? The minutes? If not, I'd entertain a motion to accept the minutes as provided.
I'll make a motion.
Jessica? Second. Okay, thanks, Raj. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept, approve the minutes as provided in the board's packet. All those in favor say aye.
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 Also, I guess, Janelle, just to let the record show, Dr. Haymore arrived at 1:02 p.m. With that, we will move on to the notice of rulemaking. This one has been in the process for a while. Finally has risen to the top. It's been a lot of work.
Roger, Janelle, I am not going to try to share screen,
Okay,
so if you just put up the initiation of rulemaking page, would be good. So Roger, yes, we've been at this for a while. This is ready for prime time. So in front of you, there is an initiation of rulemaking that is actually going to be a commissioner action, but we need to move it forward to the commissioners at this meeting. So the initiation of rulemaking is in front of you. Primary, other than just some editorial changes and some definitional changes, we are changing the residential flows for wastewater. And if everyone should be grateful, if you have a 3-bedroom permit right now, it's now a 4-bedroom permit. So you don't have to worry about the health commission coming down and rating on the parade. But we, primarily the changes are as specified in the rulemaking, and we will attach both the regulations and the construction standard to go to the commissioners. Procedurally, I'm going to ask the commissioners to initiate rulemaking and ask the Board of Health to hold a public hearing. So hopefully at our next board meeting, we will hold a public hearing on the amendments that are in front of us now. Generally, this is not a free-for-all on the regulation. Anyone who wants any other modifications to the regulation should have been here for this meeting to speak to the board. And you may want to just check that there isn't anyone out there, Roger, because it isn't too late to modify as we move forward. But if they haven't, then once they hit the commissioners, basically we're going to ask for initiation of rulemaking.
Yes. We can do this, see if there's anybody that wants to make comments on the rules that were provided in the board's packet.
Right, and it was all provided in the board packet. Board members, you need to know on Tuesday I made a change. Artists had approached me on an administrative rule that we have missed that modified the 25% slope to a 35% slope. So that's also been added to that. But with this, we mirror DEQ4 as well as the administrative rules that are governing on-site wastewater treatment. So I open up to questions.
Well, I'll just give a little more background too. I think you summarized the process fairly well. So the rules, the staff of the Environmental Health Department has been reviewing these rules for 2 years and working on them and working on revisions to them to bring them, update them to current standards and whatnot. And the other big issue with revising these rules is Flathead County had one set of flows for septic drain fields, and the Montana Department of Environmental Quality had another set of flows. And so we would submit stuff to DEQ using Flathead County flows, and it would get denied or ask for modifications. So one of the big things is to make the two rules consistent with each other. And that was a big item, and that's done now. The other thing is these rules have been vetted about 2 or 3 times through the environmental subcommittee. We've had meetings on them, gone over them, tweaked them. And so they're at a point now we're comfortable with them and feel we can go to public notice. So with that, I guess we need probably a motion to transfer the rulemaking process to the Flathead County Commissioners. Big demo. Okay. So Member Barnhart has made a motion to move the revised rules onto the rulemaking process through the Flathead County Commissioners. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Janelle, why don't we do a roll call vote on this?
Artis,
Yes.
Annie, Annie, can you unmute yourself? Don,
Aye.
Jessica,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Rod,
Yes.
and Roger.
Yes. All right, so we'll turn them over to the county commissioners and Joe will assist with that process. Thank you.
Oh, just one moment. I need to get Annie.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can- Annie, I asked for you to be unmuted in there. Are you able to unmute that?
Yes,
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you very much, Janelle.
I take it that was a yes vote.
Yes,
All right, thank you. Not yes, I'm not muted. All right, with that, we have an appeal to the health officer's decision regarding the Applegrand Jones septic system denial. A little bit of information on this, the Environmental Health Committee did review it, and Joe made a decision based on some of the rules, and I'll let Joe elaborate his. And then I understand we have a presentation from Mr. Foley, who represents the applicant, and we'll hear his presentation.
All right, well, thanks, Roger. One thing that everyone needs to know that process-wise, every permit application goes to a staff person. And the staff person will do nothing that's outside of the regulation. So we need to keep that clear. When a permit is denied, my job is to review it and to make sure that the staff did their job correctly. My job isn't to overturn and not apply the rules of Flathead County as it relates to. I don't have that. Only for some situations I can set the rules aside, but I cannot set them aside for this. So my job was to review the packet, make sure that the staff did a good job, and basically to deny the appeal. It's no more than, super staff. At that point, because this was appealed based on the fact that for new construction, we can't move forward with some setbacks, groundwater being one of them, surface water being the other. So I denied it. It is an appeal to you. It's not a variance as of yet. This is a process that could turn into a variance based on your decision, your initial decision today. But this is it's interesting. This is an interesting lot and how it was created and the time it was created. And I'm going to let Brent do his job representing this client and talk through this. But I just want you to know that procedurally, if you grant the appeal, you're setting aside that setback for new construction. Okay, that's the first thing you will do. Secondly, if you do that appeal, then you will actually look at it as a variance to that section and setback. Everything's in your packet to do that. And if you grant a variance, I have made our findings based on what I do. The findings that you should adopt are the ones that the last page in this packet. So just keep all that in mind. This is something that will kind of roll through. And I literally think this is one that I've done a few of these and I've lost a couple of them. And I will tell you that because it's, first of all, an appeal, make sure that you understand that you're setting aside a regulation to hear it as a variance. Okay. So I'm gonna let Brent, I've spent quite a bit of time with Brent catching up. We're old neighbors from over by Northridge. He's still over there. So I'll let Brent go ahead and take over and talk to you about this one.
So, Brent, I think if you want to, well, I'll ask you this. So do you think the information in the variance is applicable for the board to understand the appeal? Would it be advantageous to present that information at the same time?
I think so. I think it certainly applies to the appeal. So I won't get into some specifics of the design, but there'll probably be a little bit of overlap saying some of that stuff is for.
Okay, floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you for that introduction, Mr. Russell. As he said, this property has an interesting history. It's a part of a 20 lot subdivision that was created, I believe it was on June 1973. At the time it was created, it was exempt from the State Sanitation Subdivisions Act. So for every lot now that would be in this size range, we would have to go through new subsurface investigation, show all our calculations for conditions for waters, things like that, to show that this lot could be subdivided. Back then, it was completely exempt. And so it was granted subdivision with the intention of it being able to be a residential lot. And none of those subsurface properties. So now we look at it, this lot, we hit clay at about 24 inches. There has been groundwater monitoring done on this in the past. In the locations along the eastern edge, we only have 27 to 30 inches in groundwater. Current regulations are 48 inches to groundwater or impervious layer. So the best we can do is approximately 30 inches. The subsurface problem what is the challenge here and why we can't meet current county regulations. Based on the rights that were given to this lot when it was subdivided many years ago. Footnote A, as Mr. Russell mentioned, states that you cannot get a variance to these setbacks, which include over impervious layers and groundwater table. So in my personal opinion, that footnote directly conflicts the rights that were given to this property by the state that was granted. Because they were not required to look at subsurface properties. With that, the intention of this footnote is to obviously create 48 inches of separation from this ground. That can absolutely be achieved by utilizing elevated sand mound, which are used on the valley. Essentially, we elevate that, add more sand to create that 48 inches of separation. And really, I mean, I think everybody focuses on groundwater in this particular situation. I'm more focused on clay as being impervious layer, which is slightly higher than groundwater. So that's what we're proposing. So we can still meet the intent of this standard through certain design methods. And from everything that we have calculated and reviewed, we are quite confident that this will not degrade state waters. It will not create any health issues. So we're requesting that you allow us to design around that to meet the intent. Is not outside of the state laws. So as you know, obviously we rewrite regulations all the time, try to make it better, try to get them to fit situations properly. And no regulations that will ever be written will fit every single situation perfectly. This is a prime example of one that the regulations were not written for this exact situation, the history and laws around its subdivision. So that, with that, I consider this appeal to. I think there's a severe conflict. The opportunity. Question this time is consider a little bit for the appeal considerations.
Maybe, yeah, you can give us a little bit more on why you think that it would pass the criteria or complies with the criteria and meets the variance.
Okay, let me jump to this criteria.
One of the board members that's online is asking if you could raise your voice a little. I tried turning up the mic, but she can't hear you.
Okay, absolutely. It's kind of low and it tends to home.
Bend over and speaking.
So, yeah, I need to donate a new stand here. So as far as not impacting, the variance criteria, it's contaminating drinking water supplies. It looks bad. I think the wells in the immediate vicinity are ranged from 80 to 150 feet. The average is around 110, I believe. There is a solid clay layer. So I haven't looked at a lot of the well logs in the area, but that clay layer will help to confine and separate surface contaminants from drinking water supplies. So we're also, nitrates and phosphorus are considerations for protecting state waters, drinking supplies. We ran, despite the fact that it's exempt, we still ran preliminary non-degradation state waters analysis. Phosphorus required to have minimum 50 years to state water. Based on our calculations, we're sitting about 320 years, so we're easily fine with that. Nitrate sensitivity analysis. You have to be below a factor of 5. We can even have a background of 7 and still meet that requirement. So we could easily meet state standards for non-degradation state waters. Additionally, all this, despite the fact that mixing zones didn't apply back then, we're still showing mixing zones to show that it is outside of the surrounding well isolation zones. So based on that, we follow every standard current regulation we possibly can to show that we're protecting public health and safety there. Additionally, in the design, despite the fact that it may not be necessary, I talked to our client, they said, one way to provide more advanced treatment would be to install level 2 treatment system, which greatly reduces nitrates before it's even sent to the drain. It's really not necessary to meet degradation standards, but it will advance level treatment. So they're also looking to install that. I think that more or less covers the degradation protection of water supplies and the best criteria.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Foley. Joe, what is the process to address the appeal?
Directly, if you wish to grant an appeal, then that would be how you do it. And I think Brent hit most of the major parts, but if you go back to my letter that I sent to the applicant Jones, I bulleted the same, very similar information. One thing that I think is interesting about this is it fell right into where the Cladding Act and the Sanitation Act were uncoupled, trying to get together. And it was interesting that some lots created in this we had restrictions imposed because of the lot size. This one was over 5, so it doesn't get restrictions, and that's in the packet also, where the DEQ has basically said there are no restrictions on this property. So we're not doing anything, we're the only entity that will act on this lot. It has nothing to do with the state subdivision. Now this has been platted. But it fell right in this really interesting spot where it just didn't get reviewed, it was approved. It has no restrictions, and it's really left up to local board of health to make a decision if this property should be permitted.
I guess just one other thing to point out, when I reviewed this too, the surrounding lots are all developed. And they're all developed with basically the same sort of system of raised sand mound to address the high water table in this area. And then fully engineering, designing to account for that underlying clay layer as the impervious layer. So anyway, I guess I thought it was important to hear the variance information so that we would have some comfort level if we decide to approve the appeal, to know what the issues are. So I guess we need a motion then to allow the appeal to move forward.
Mr. Chairman, before that, may I ask Mr. Foley?
Oh, you bet. I'm sorry. Yeah,
That's fine. I have worked in those areas up there, and when you get the impervious clay layer of 2 feet, you feel comfortable that even by elevating the sand mound and adding another foot of sand to get separation, you're gonna have an adequate treatment area, that you're not gonna have a failure.
Absolutely. And in fact, I mean, the most common cause of failure, so you have the treatment, making sure you're getting adequate treatment. Then also ensuring that you aren't going to get failure from some year that has extraordinarily high groundwater to wash away some of that sand. So when it's not just elevating the mound, that creates your separation. But as you do that, you're still required to go to the application rate that is required for clay. So what that does is greatly expand your basal area to add a lot more area. So you're still designing for clay infiltration rates. And so it's not just elevating, you're adding a whole lot of.
You're adding a lot of more base area.
Absolutely.
To allow that. Okay, that was
Yep,
that was my
is a
question, when being
regulation.
on the ground and actually doing these, this is what I've seen with Bill and I dealt with one many years ago, and that was exactly the problem. Is there was a impervious clay layer, not enough area on the base area that, and we ended up with a failure net to fight it because it was a group system. That's why I asked that question.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, great question. I'm glad you jumped in. So, any other questions for Mr. Foley? Jessica?
I'm not an expert in this field, so I'm just interested. So this permit has been denied twice before, and so why is this different, do you think?
I don't think they really looked at what they have, to be quite honest. None of the properties have changed from the time this subdivision was created. I really can't speak for some of there's one consultant that worked on this, I know in the past, I can't remember if it was 2007 or prior. Otherwise, I think it was more personal efforts by the lot owner to just try to meet high groundwater. And I don't think they understood what rules and laws apply to this particular property. And for whatever reason, they just chose not to go forward with the process that we're going through right now. So.
And you had mentioned that secondary decontamination, is that part of the variance, and that the lot owner plans to, does plan to install that should the variance again be granted?
Yes. Yeah, and in our design, you'll notice we put in on the top of the tank. And
Okay,
essentially,
that's what that is.
yeah,
Okay.
and that recirculates through biologic media that's in there, and that's how the nitrate reduction occurs.
All right, thank you. Good question. Any other questions, for Mr. Foley? All right, back to the appeal. Mr. Coons.
Thank you, Chairman. I do have one question about procedure with this. So if the variance, if the appeal went through and you had the variance, Does staff go back out and re-verify that all of this has been done to spec, or do we just go with the plans?
No, we've actually been out there very recently, and this plan is.
So you have verified the plan?
Oh, yeah.
If, okay,
Yeah,
that was our list.
I've done all the things on it.
Thank you.
Well, no, that's a good question. So there is a little bit of follow-up to that too. So they've done their onsite and reviewed the plans, and it's being stamped by a professional licensed engineer. But then there's a final test when it's installed that they do a test, onsite test, and a staff member from the health department will go out and do the final inspection before it's given the final permit.
Mr. Chairman, I have another question. There again, we set aside, if we deny this appeal, would we be, if we agree with this appeal, would we be setting aside that rule that we have a setback rule? Whereas if we went to the variance, it would still stay in place and we would just be varying it just for clarification.
Again, I'll let Joe respond to that.
And that's really a good point. It is an appeal of my decision. So you would grant the appeal, which would set the regulation aside only for this appeal. And at that point, you're literally granting the variance to that. So it has to be an appeal, as section 14.2 states in the regulation. So you would grant an appeal based on section 14.2 of the regulation, which would only for this instance, because we had the discussion about keeping that in the reg and we wanted it in. So that's why we are set here. You grant the appeal based on 14.2, and that's what your motion would be. And at that point, you would take up the variance to the setback, the 48-inch setback, which Brent has overcome by his design. It's no different than it was 3 meetings ago where we granted a variance within a mile of this for a replacement. At that point, it would look like a replacement, not new construction.
All right, thanks. Good discussion. So I guess we need a motion to either approve or deny the appeal. We're not going to table.
I'll make a motion to grant the appeal.
All right, thank you. Is there a second to Artis's motion to grant the appeal? Second. Thank you. All right, it's been moved and seconded to allow this appeal to move forward. With that, we'll have a roll call vote, Janelle.
Artis,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Dawn,
Aye.
Jessica,
No.
Pam,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Rod,
Yes.
Roger.
Yes. All right, so we have approved the appeal moving forward. Now we address the variance, and I'll let Joe discuss the variance and how that process works.
Because of where this was, you have no health officer recommendation, but based on your decision, you know my recommendation. And the fact that I've already written findings, my recommendation moving forward with the variance. So quite frankly, you have 2 things in front of you. You need to adopt the findings if you're going to grant the variance, which I think you pretty much set yourself on a course to do that. So either way you want to do it, Roger, is fine. But we would take 2 motions. We would grant the variance to section 11.2, setback to ground yard, knowing full well that we have a plan that meets our regulation. And then you would also have a motion to adopt the findings, and they are the last sheet in the last sheets of the package.
Thank you. So it would, for instance, with Board of Adjustments, we typically adopt the findings of fact before we adopt the variances. So I think this is a unique situation. It's interesting that it precedes the subdivision regulations, the date of the subdivisions. They went into effect on July 1, 1973. So it squeaked out. So there's, that's why there are no non-degradation rules or anything like that that apply to this. But Foley Engineer has worked through that and found that he could meet that. They've gone from level 1 to level 2 treatment, which provides additional benefit to water quality. I've looked at some of the well logs in the area myself, and it appears it's the underlying aquifer where people get their water from is a confined aquifer. So the likelihood of this aquifer being contaminated is pretty nominal. And so for those reasons, I guess I am in favor of moving forward on this. So, that's my perspective. If anybody else wants to give their thoughts on it, I'd certainly like to hear.
Well, Mr. Chairman, my thought is by putting a mound, because you're getting that separation too from the groundwater, it's a big thing. We've done them before to do it, the separation and then that level 2 system, because they will tell you that level 2, you could actually drink that water if you really wanted to. That's how clean it is, but not gonna drink it, but that's what they say. So I'm in favor of moving forward with the variance as well.
So is there either a motion to accept or either to approve or deny the findings of fact?
I'll make a motion to accept the findings of facts that were presented to us. in the back end.
So just as a reminder, Joe went through these and structured them so that if we do decide to grant this variance, these findings of fact support that variance. Okay, thank you. All right, it's been moved and seconded to accept the findings of fact relative to the variance. We might as well do a roll call on this also.
Artist,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Dawn,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes, I accept these the facts. Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Rod,
Yes.
and Roger.
Yes. All right, thank you. So the next thing is now to approve the variance. We've had considerable discussion on what the variance criteria is and how it applies. Certainly open, if anybody else has any questions or comments and would like to address Mr. Foley, or feel free. The floor is open.
Mr. Chairman, I have no questions or comments, so I would like to motion to approve. Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to approve the variance as provided. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All right, it's been moved to and seconded to accept the variance and as provided in our packet. Janelle, would you please do a roll call vote?
Artist,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Dawn,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Rod,
Yes.
Roger.
Yes. All right, thank you. That was our heavy lifting for the day. We can now move on with the fun stuff. And first on is department reports. We have the animal shelter up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Guess I'll try and be brief. The shelter's feeling a little luck of the Irish lately. We received and installed our new X-ray radiology equipment that we had asked to spend donated funds on, and it started being operational today. I think Janelle might have a picture, just to prove that it's really there. It's quite the step up from what we had, and what we had was a used system that we bought in 2005 that the technology is not out of date on, and this takes more clear pictures and faster, and so it was quite a process. The county has policies on this. We got 3 bids on this. We got a lot of help from Dr. Malberg. Thank you very much. The preferred choice just happened to be the lowest bid, so I'll call that like the average. This also involved the sale of our old surplus equipment, which can be a little tricky, and that was accomplished. I can't wait to tell Pam about that. At actually a better deal for the county than we had intended. And so it's just amazing that a small shelter our size in a rural area has such equipment available. And if there's any question in anybody's minds of how often we use this, it was about 2 months ago that some dogs that I'm going to tell you about in a minute were in there. And one almost died on the operating table and was actually saved by having radiology pictures where the blockage was. It was quite a story. And so anyway, thank you to the donors. So the other 2 pieces of good news, we had 4. One of the things the shelter gets to do is to house vicious dogs, court case dogs, lots of different things, but unadoptable dogs. And we had 4 malnourished cruelty case dogs brought in mid-November. And on Tuesday, the court settled the case with the defendant relinquishing the dogs. One of those dogs was a dog, these dogs were so emaciated that they were living, 4 of the largest breed dogs, I won't go into their detail, they were living in a Honda Civic, and one ate its blanket and had blockage, and it was quite good. So these kind of cases are really hard on the staff. They have great staff and a lot of emotions and go into this sort of thing. So everybody is feeling pretty darn good about that. And the other use of donated funds, I think you all know, we're working on a small multi-purpose building, and that building has been, it's amazing. They started in the dead of winter. It's got a roof on it. We're pretty much on schedule, and so we're pretty excited to see that. And nothing but good news today. Any questions?
Frank, I don't have any questions, but I just say that, the donors have been so great to the animal shelter, and our community has stepped up big time for the animal shelter. We get some donations to different departments, Parks and Rec and that, but nothing like we see to the animal shelter. And they must be seeing good things out there because they're highly involved, and the equipment you just talked about, as you said, would not be available without them. So big thanks to the community for what they give to the shelter.
Next month, I'll be at the Humane Society's Animal Care Expo, which is the big educational presentation every year. And I know I'll see a lot of my old friends that I've met over the last 12, 13 years. And I'll try to be humble when I tell them you won't believe what's happening in our little shelter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bud. Keep up the good work. Thanks. Oh, Jessica.
Yeah. Just to share, can I share the little anecdote that you told me? So due to some creative thinking on Director Cliff's part, he was actually able to convince the company that sold us him the new machine, the county the new machine, to take a trade-in of the old machine, and also that therefore it reduced the cost significantly of the new machine. And the old machine was able to go to Livingston because he had already arranged a buyer at the Humane Society there. So he did 2 wonderful turns, some hardworking creative thinking.
that was a real happy outcome too. So sometimes things work out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Community health.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shivani, Community Health Manager. I just have some quick updates for a few of our programs. And I'll start with WIC. So as most of you probably heard, we had a big infant formula recall happening in February, which was a big topic that WIC helped in our community to get resources out. We worked with the grocery stores to get the recalled products off the shelves and educated all of our participants about options of different formulas that they could get, as well as just answered a bunch of community questions. I know I was on the triage call line for that, and we got quite a few phone calls every day. So I think the message was pushed out into the community well, and people were able to get the formulas that they needed despite the recalls. Other things in WIC, we do have our third Montana State University dietetic intern starting with us next week. And it's a great time as we're starting some outreach projects with OBGYN clinics and starting a project to improve our participant shopping experiences at local retailers. From our Montana WIC needs assessment, we found out that Flathead wasn't the only area. This was all across the board of this state, but participants were having a pretty hard time. I think pandemic kind of influenced this, but they were having a hard time shopping. So we're starting a project to reach out to those realtors again and make some handouts and just build upon that patient shopping experience for them. And we also started an education series. This was put on by our breastfeeding peer counselor, actually, and she's doing this with all the daycares in Flathead Valley, which we have over 60 daycares. And she was able to reach out to all of them on an education topic, which our first topic was proper breast milk storage. So that was pretty successful, and we had a lot of good feedback from all the daycares, really appreciative of that information that we shared with them. All right, I'll jump next to home visiting. So we are finally fully staffed for home visiting. Oh boy, has it been a long time since we have been fully staffed. We were able to hire on our nurse in January and 2 part-time social workers in February. Our wait list is currently 26 from referrals, or about somewhere between 25 and 30 right now. I didn't check as of today. I apologize for that. And then we also have a transfer list still, meaning when we lost a couple home visitors previously, a lot of those participants wanted to stay in our program, but we didn't have anywhere to put them. With our other remaining home visitors had such high caseloads as it was. So they've just been kind of on a wait list where we've been checking in with them weekly, making sure that they have everything they need and we're addressing any high-risk crisis situations with them. So we do have 12 families on that list right now. So as soon as our new home visitors get trained, which unfortunately it is kind of a long training process to do our parents as teachers curriculum training and then state training. But after they get trained, we can start increasing our caseload and helping more people, which is great. Our current home visitors who have been keeping our caseload at what it was, just to give you a picture, our caseload is 65. And we had 3 part-time people, which one just started in January, attributing to this caseload. And they've been able to help 53 people on a 65-person caseload. And that 65-person caseload is meant for several home visitors, not just 3. So they've been doing an amazing job keeping up and keeping our families who are in need with all the resources that we can give them. And then I do want to give a shout out to the home visiting program. We did a CQI in 2021, which was based on, and I'm sorry, Janelle, I didn't attach this data, I probably should have. But our CQI was based on early literacy. So one of our performance metrics from HRSA and McPhee in general from the federal and state level, we base it off of 1 year or so performance measures, and one of them is based on early literacy with a specific question of encouraging families to read, sing, or tell stories to their children on a daily basis. So that was our focus for our CQI in 2021, and we were able to do some really good work
So we started out Q1 at 27% of our families saying that they read, sing, or tell stories daily. And by the end of the year, we were up to 74% of our families engaging in one of those activities on a daily basis. And just to give you some reference, the Montana annual average for 2021 was 61%, and the HRSA national benchmark is 74%. So we were able to meet that. Which is great. Our next CQI is on Will Child Check, so we'll keep you up to date as that one gets rolling. Any questions? Yeah.
So no enrollment on parents as teachers, has that been on hold because of
Yes, just because,
staffing?
yeah,
And so-
our caseloads are already, we give you a great example. One of our home visitors who is at 0.8 FTE, her normal caseload is 18 and she's working at 23 already. So,
Sure. And
yep,
then-
as spaces become available, we will be enrolling left and right.
And then once these new folks are trained up as well.
Yep, they have to complete every training set before they're eligible to get a caseload. So we have 2 of our part-time social workers that are taking off those trainings as fast as we are physically capable and starting home visits with families even before the trainings are done. So
And maybe you mentioned this, and I missed it. How deep is the waiting list right now?
referrals, it's between 25 and 30 referrals on a wait list, and then 12 families that we need to actively get into caseloads.
And your projection is for those 12, how long until you think you're gonna be able to?
Oh, we'll
have
be
those
able
in?
to scoop those right into caseloads in the next couple weeks. Yes, and then we're getting a budget reallocation from the state. I'm not quite sure how fast they're gonna turn that around, but that will be able to increase our caseload from 65 total to 77. So that's more people as fast as we can. Any other questions?
Thank you. Great. All right, we'll move on to population count.
Hi, everyone. My name is Malia, and I work in population health. I'm the epidemiologist and accreditation coordinator. So I'm going to run through the population health report and then give an accreditation update for the department. So starting with communicable disease, we didn't see any outliers really in our report for this past month. We did see 10 influenza hospitalizations, and we continue to see that influenza A was the most prevalent strain in Flathead County. Other than that, was pretty much reporting as usual. And then moving into our chronic disease prevention programs, which are the tobacco prevention and the cancer screening program. Numbers there stayed pretty steady throughout the past month. We're fully staffed in those programs, which is great. So they're continuing to do education and outreach activities. And then they're working towards doing a bit more provider outreach now that the roads are getting better and we can travel to the other counties to see those county providers as well. And then same with injury prevention. Their fiscal year is a little bit different, which is how their chart is filled out with all their numbers, but numbers are staying steady there as well. Same with sharks. Okay, so accreditation. We are an accredited health department. We're accredited through the Public Health Accreditation Board, or FAB, and we're one of 332 accredited state or local health departments throughout the country. We were first accredited in 2016, and that initial accreditation lasts for 5 years. So at the end of 2021, we were asked to apply for reaccreditation. So for the past year or so, we've been working as a department to gather a lot of different documents, examples, just proof that we are meeting the standards and measures for the FAB reaccreditation process. Today was actually a really exciting day because this morning, Joe and I officially applied, I guess, for our reaccreditation application. And then after that process, kind of what it looks like is they will accept our application and then give us an opportunity to fill in all of the submission requirements. So we'll give them all of our documentation that we've been gathering. And then there'll be a review process where they'll go through all of that and then provide us feedback. We'll have a secondary submission process where we will revise kind of the things that they need to clarify and then resubmit. And then after that, hopefully we're accredited again for another 5 years. So that process is going to take probably over a year. Due to the pandemic, FAB had quite a bit of time it takes for them to review all of our documentation. And there are a lot of different documents that we submitted. They cover 12 different domains. policies, which really are just kind of the 10 essential services of public health plus some administrative documentation. So there's over 100 different narratives, examples, proof that we submitted. So hopefully we're expecting to hear back within the year, and I will keep you guys updated as we go through the process. But today was the first step, so that was really exciting. Questions?
You look rather tense with Dr. Hagan.
I'm thinking just about the meeting that we had, I think, last month. Is there any rules or policies regarding staff drug use that will affect accreditation, particularly with marijuana and anything like that?
So accreditation doesn't really, as far as reaccreditation, I wasn't here when we initially accredited. They didn't ask for any sort of policy on drug use or anything like that. It was more so like workforce development. They asked to see like a general job description, but they didn't ask for any of those policies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just thinking ahead.
Could you explain to me how the health officer plays into this? Because I know the health officer and like our plan for the future is part of the accreditation process. Is that correct? And then if we don't have a health officer, like permanent position filled, will we be denied accreditation? And what would that do to the department?
So the health officer is kind of the final approval piece. So as the accreditation coordinator, I kind of work to gather all the documents. I work with all of our different program managers and staff to be able to get everything together. Joe was assisting me in that process by reviewing everything and submitting. If we don't have a health officer, I'm sure there's probably some sort of like addendum that we would have or we would file for a certain thing, but we also have to have support from the county commissioners as well. So they kind of are our overarching governmental board. So I don't think that they would deny us accreditation, but again, we probably won't be hearing from them until 2023 at the earliest. So it'll be a long time without health officer.
We love you. Stay forever.
You'll have a new health officer, but plenty of time. Not gonna be an issue. If you don't mind, Rob.
Yeah.
Maria's done a tremendous amount of work on this, and this is, I shepherded us through the first one. Dan, you were on the board, and this is a big deal. I mean, when we did this the first time, it was all site, everything, they were here, and they talked to everyone. And you have to realize almost all 50 state health departments are accredited. So when you hear Malia say 330, you take that down to 280 for local health departments. That's a 10th of all local health departments in the United States. So we're one of 10. When you think about being accredited, it's not an easy process. It's a fulfilling process to understand that when you look at these 12 domains, this is really good stuff. And we had to change some things because of House Bill 121 and some other things, but it's not going to change that we will get accredited again. And we'll have that plaque down there. The commissioners will have the letter over in their chambers. And I did it one time, and I won't be here to see it through, but I'm going to come back when we get accredited, and I'm going to be very happy for that. It's a really cool thing. Those that are in, that see other accreditations understand these aren't easy to get. And if you know that only 10% of the local health departments have been accredited, it's a milestone for Flathead County. It's a good thing. So thanks for the work you're doing. And it's not just that. We're working forward with workforce development and a lot of other things. Malia's doing all of our, just use the acronym, sorry, the chip and chaw stuff that we're doing right now for the health, the community health improvement plan. So there's a lot going on, and it's a lot of really good things that will end up with the strategic plan out of the Board of Health at some point in the future.
And to what extent does accreditation improve our likelihood of grants and things when we apply? It is that, I presume that is weighed in our favor when we're applying for public grants.
So when that really first started, that was going to be, if you were accredited, every grant was going to be a slam dunk. We never got to that level of, oh, you're accredited, it's done. But it does play in our favor that we are an accredited health department. It does play in our favor that we are accredited.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your efforts, Leah.
Thank
Great job, great job. All right, Kurt, I hope you don't have any sick dog stories.
No, I don't. Good afternoon. This is the finance report for February. We've been into budgeting right now, of course, and the preliminary budget will be done by the end of next week. So that's coming up. We've scheduled a Board of Health Finance Committee meeting coming up on the, I believe it's the 6th of April, that we'll sit and look at that first iteration of the budget. And possibly maybe look at something going on at the April board meeting to maybe look at that preliminary budget that will be up to the board. And maybe it may come back with some sort of final budget, but again, up to the board. So really everything going well. Home health, bit of improvement, up $25,000 in the cash position, so looking better. That continuing for the McBee accounts receivable firm is getting started. They're almost all the way through the process and they're just dialing in some of the collection stuff. And so we'll start seeing some things come through with that. So, no, looking pretty good. Any questions about February's finances or questions in general?
So then to be clear, that 25K increase is prior to the initiation of.
That's right. Correct.
Any other questions for Kurt? All right,
Thank you.
environmental health, Joe, you're up.
Said goodbye to Kate last Thursday. Now a lot is going to follow on me.
Yeah, so just to update, Kate Cassidy, who we used to make these presentations, retired a week ago today. So we'll certainly miss her. She was gosh, I bet she worked there 15, 20 years.
Yes, I was started 15 and then went back in the private sector for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then
She also was instrumental in helping revise these rules that were approved today. So she has had lots of experience, lots of on-site knowledge. So there's some big shoes there to fill. But hopefully we got people coming on board.
yeah, we have two positions open. The manager and staff level person will help with someone. If you have anyone out there that you think would be a good fit, send them my way. Like, talk to them. A couple things. Our food and consumer program did a great job last week. 128 food service inspections, above the our 12-month running average. Really starting in to try to get off a lot of these seasonal motels done. If you looked at the plan reviews that were done last, not only are they doing a lot of inspections of health, golf, and most of those are tourist homes. Fortunately, we don't have to inspect those annually. It's pretty early to see 25 septic system applications. It looks like it might be a pretty big year. With COVID really slowing down, I plan on picking up at least a zone. I was going to take Don with me, and we're going to pick up the zone, and we'll start doing site evaluations, okay? You'll probably never sit next to me again. But, it's a lot of applications for February, and usually March is when we really start to boom. So, we'll handle that. The staff we have, we have 3 really go-getters, and I think we'll be fine. And then I'll just do what I can. You probably look at the low scores. If you have any questions about the low scores, I'd be glad to talk to you about them. Just so you understand about the low score system, I'm involved in any of those. They come to me, I sign a letter with the sanitary plan of compliance. So I pretty much, before any letter goes out, I sit down with the staff and we review what's going on, what needs to be done, how habitually they are not complying. But, you know, once again, our food and consumer staff are rock stars. They're getting a lot done, and should be really proud of what they're doing.
Have you awarded any gold stars yet, or? is that-
We're probably just rolling into
Okay.
that, because I will make sure that, thank you for bringing that, I'll make sure that that's reporting is done. Thanks. Any questions about environmental health?
Is Pete still cooking chicken? Oh, I figured that.
Did I take that off the health officer?
You did.
Yeah.
It is off of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I was
you
getting tired,
solved
so
it?
there is a warrant for his
Oh.
arrest.
Oh,
okay.
But they're not gonna go pick him up unless he has some other violation that he's found before. I don't understand why he doesn't come in and just try to help himself and comply, because it's not gonna get any better. But that Pete's still pretty good. I can't really say it without laughing. Yeah, he's still at large.
But it looks like he hasn't been operating for the last couple of weeks.
You know, artists, you would know. You
I
by.
drive past her. I haven't seen any vehicles parking there.
Yeah.
Did? Maybe it was Jules. Cars,
I
but-
have to stop in and say hi. I do have one question. Also, Joe, I noticed the school inspections, but on the graph, it didn't show them on there. Under food and consumer safety, it says school facility inspections. Is there a difference between school facility inspections and the actual food service inspections?
There is. So there's a rule for schools, and we do inspect the school, the facility. So we'll go into the science rooms, look for hoods, chemicals, you know, all the safety things that you would want to make sure that children are not being subjected to. So we look at science rooms, look at chemical storage, look at hoods, look at like just janitor storage facilities, ventilation. We also look at lighting, and we also can check decibels, or, if you think about, that's a pretty sensitive environment for children. And so we'll look at the light, we'll look at sound and how that might be impacting it. So we have a separate rule for schools. We'll look at playground equipment. We'll also couple that with our community health nurses doing immunization and health reviews too.
Are they only doing, it says that there are only 8 inspections. Is that just done annually then? Did that happen in March last year?
Generally, we do them on demand because they need them for their accreditation. A couple of years ago, we did a real saturation. We got some extra money. We did a saturation with all the schools. But generally, we'll do big schools every year, but some of the schools we do just on demand. They'll ask us, and they'll need that record for their accreditation process.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Any other? I had a question. Joe, up in town, we did candidate. Oh, well, I work those on. Mandate that we get the lead out of our drinking water in the schools. And we have to test all the water lines and everything else. What's your feeling on that? Is it a major health hazard at this point? Or is it just something that is on today's menu?
Don, I because this really didn't involve us originally, I literally got involved and started looking at this because I had a parent call and go, oh my gosh, what is going on in the schools? So this isn't the first school, right? We did lead in the schools in the 90s, and that one was really more supply oriented. We were looking at the 2 big issues is material, lead soldering, copper piping, and corrosivity. So pH has a big thing to do with it. So those are the 2 things we looked at back then. This one is very specific to fixtures that are used for drinking water purposes. So if you go to the school district 5 site and look on there, they have accounted for every fixture And there's two triggers. There's the MCL trigger of 0.015 milligrams per milliliter. And then there's a third trigger of 0.005 milligrams per milliliter. I'm hoping, I almost just said ppm because I'm not always, sometimes I'll screw up my units. But so there's two triggers, and they're even both triggers end up the same thing. You must take the fixture out of service. What's going to happen is we're going to go back to looking at the systems. And one of the things that they are requiring is the worst time is Monday mornings because the systems is sitting there. So they, one of the things that they're requiring is a flushing system on Monday morning. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's interesting they're using a third trigger, a third of the MCL for a trigger. We're going to get more involved. We're not doing any blood lead testing yet, but we do. I wish Kulani was still here because it's not easy to get those kits. And we don't even have enough kits to tell the public that we can do some blood lead screening. But what I want to do is I want to tie it to the epidemiologic activities around there and look at, if we're going to do any blood lead level, do you want to do it in fourth graders in Whitefish because they jump to a new school after that, right? Want to do it with fifth graders in Kalispell because then they jump to the middle school. So if we do anything, and this is a kind of a cool thing, Pete, I'm sure your mind's racing right now, but if we start to do some blood lead leveling, I don't want to do a kindergarten that's been in the classroom for 6 months. I want to do one that's been there for 7 years. So we might pick your brain in the future and think about what we might want to do. Logan Health has already asked if we need any help, if they can be great participants with us. So stay tuned. Very early in the process.
Do you see any correlation by the age of the building?
Very much. Yeah, except interesting that Rankin's got some pictures. Which is interesting because Rankin probably, the plumbing in this building, there's no lead solid. It's all copper pipe with no lead solid. It's all lead push. And so what makes,
So lead solder is a secret in most of it in-house in building, right?
Most often.
Yes. And they stopped, does anybody know when they stopped using lead in the I don't know.
Probably not when we did the first one. It's been that long. That's where the part of the sweat joints. Right? Because the lead made it real easy to do it.
I was surprised at those results myself because Kalispell's water is pretty basic. It should be fairly non-corrosive. Right. So, see that.
There may be some lead piping up there too.
Yeah.
That's outside of the facilities too. So we'll ramp up this meeting for this, but a lot of our staff have talked about this.
Okay, we'll move on to the health officer report.
Well, I'm sure you've all studied it, so I won't spend a lot of time. Graphs all look pretty impressive. They're seeing a lot of reduction in numbers. Before I popped in today, I checked the infectious disease site that was counted. It's a different world. Why don't you run down to the third slide? This is a real telling one. You know that this is one of my favorite slides. Granted, the testing's going down. We have a lot of people that are asymptomatic, so we're not seeing a lot of testing. But we're also the testing that we're seeing, 5% positivity rate. So that's, that couples with the fact that people aren't just ignoring the fact that we need that so, but the ones that are testing, only 5% are coming back positive. So that's always a good sign. Breakthrough cases are just, I'm going to use a term that's really unscientific. It's just really wonky. And I think it has a lot to do with the amount of that we just don't have a lot of cases. So we're seeing Some days I'm seeing 100% breakthrough cases because we're seeing such small numbers. Some days I'm seeing none. So I think it's basically because we just don't have any power in the numbers right now. Vaccination rates by age haven't really changed very much over the month. Looking at the hospitalizations, we're also seeing a good trend downward. Right now, we have, Logan has 6 patients in there, and 2 of them are out of count. So it kind of plays to this last slide that I want you to see. When the CDC changed and did the community levels in the indicators, I automatically started to do those. And I think Rod and I had one email discussion about these. What's up? If you go to the CDC site right now, we're median. But we have asked, the state has asked that we have no idea where they're getting their case numbers. And we have no idea where they're getting the hospitalization numbers. And as you probably know, my case numbers come right out of the state site and are verified by the state's dashboard. And our hospital numbers come right out of the hospitals. So we have been green for a couple of weeks, and I'm really comfortable with those numbers. And when you start to see the fact that we don't have a lot of cases coming up, our vital load in the community is really low. And that's what's driving where we are right now. Will it change? Could it change? East Coast is seeing a little uptick. Europe is seeing a big uptick. We'll have to see how it goes, but boy, it sure is a price right now. Just a couple other things that are going on, and I know Pam's going to cover one of these, but the veterinary services contract's been signed back home, and so everything's in place with that. Bargaining unit negotiations, we are in the middle of that. We're getting really close to hopefully getting them all wrapped up. We have one more meeting coming up. 6, so I hope I don't have a conflict. But we're moving through the health officer search process. I have it here, but Pam was going to report on that.
Yeah, I have an email here from Tammy. So as of closing, we received 8 applications. Crossman, who we hired to go out for this job, is still reviewing some of them, but they've determined that 5 of them will go through for sure, maybe 1 or 2 more. And then, let's see, our first round of interviews will be with the Personnel Committee on Monday, the 21st. We have some other, we're going to wait and kind of see how that goes. If we get them in all on Monday, we're going to do that. If not, then we'll do it again on Wednesday, the 30th, depending on availability of candidates. And for meeting laws, we're going to, of course, post the meeting. Public comment will be held from 8 to 8:15, and then we will go into executive session, which is closed to the public for the interviews during the rest of the day. And that's basically because of privacy for the individuals. So exact times we haven't determined yet because we're still in conversations with the applicant. So I don't know times yet. But if you watch the posting, it'll be posted, and you'll know when we're going to meet when we find out those times. And then once that process, then we're not sure. We're just going to see how that all goes. And then the process is the Personnel Committee will make a recommendation going forward. Those individuals will go to the Health Board as a whole. And we're not sure how that's going to work yet. We'll keep everybody updated as we go along. And then after that, you guys look at whoever's in the pool. You make a recommendation to the commissioners, and then the commissioners have the final say. We do another interview in the commissioners' chambers, which will be public. And then we hire commissioners. That's kind of the process. Don't have all the times yet or the dates nailed down other than the last 2 I just gave. That's it. Yes, sir.
So when we first bring in candidates that the board or the committee has selected to the full health board, what if you open meeting?
you know, that's in discussions. I probably, but I don't know yet. Tammy's working on that. Depends on where we get through the interviews.
You
I really can't answer that.
plan on using a similar interview processes?
Well, we thought about that. You know, before we had the groups
Right.
that met each one. But at that time, I think we also had a commissioner involvement. And that's kind of why we did that. This time, we're not gonna have the commissioners involved at that level. So we may just have the whole health board meet, and that would be an open public, I think. I don't think they can close an executive session there. But anyway, that's all to be determined. Right? We'll just follow the law, whatever that is.
May I make a comment?
Certainly.
Was that a yes? Can you hear me?
Are you muted?
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you good.
Okay, super. So the first round that we did looking for a health officer, it was done very professionally by the recruiter. We got booklets on, the entire health board got booklets with the resumes of all the applicants. It was very, very well done. And the whole board, you know, we ended up having smaller groups, but initially the whole board got to look at every single resume, and that was the proper way to do it, the professional way to do it. Last year, we got down to just one applicant, and in 2021, supposedly just one applicant is what was told to us. 2021, the Flathead became, you know, one of the most attractive places to live in the country. So it's hard for me to imagine that it really went from a dozen or more down to just one. You know, and my concern is when you go down to just a committee of just 3 people, it's never going to be a quorum. It's never going to come before the public. It's if they wanted to, if they chose to, it doesn't have to come before the whole board. And to me, that lack of transparency is alarming.
Back in 2021, there were way more applicants than the health department saw, I believe.
So why was there, if there were a lot of applicants, why was there only one that was brought to our attention by Kyle Waterman, the chairman of the personnel committee at the time? Only one. I'm not talking about the first round. I'm talking about the second round. There was only one applicant. And that just seems strange when we had probably roughly a dozen previously, when we all had access to all of the resumes. There were roughly a dozen.
Yeah.
And then it went down to one when everything was just put before just the personnel committee. It was just one applicant. It just seemed strange that for that to happen in 2021 when people are clamoring to move here. I think we got in 2021, it's like 25 to 30,000 new people moving here. And all of a sudden it went from a dozen down to one applicant for the health officer. It just seemed strange.
Well, it didn't go from 12 to 1. There was some individuals, I think we ended up with like 3, and then they started dropping out, or 3 or 4. Jess, you were on there too. I'm trying to remember, we ended up with like 3 or 4.
We had 3 or 4, and some of them didn't even have, well, we had like 8, and some of them didn't even qualify for the position at all. And then we interviewed 3 or 4 of them with the health officer, with the personnel committee, and then we found, you know, one that we thought would be the best candidate for the board, just to like, it was after many hours of interviewing people and deciding like they would expect us pay. We had people drop out when we had a, you know, a very finite pay range. We had people drop out when they researched Valley and then decided not to come. And then we had people drop out at the end when we wanted to present them because they were the last candidates and they had the qualifications, and then they still dropped out. So that's what happened in the second round.
But it was entirely taken care of through a very small personnel committee, and the rest of us never saw it. And that was not the way it was done the first round. And the first round was done properly. This is not proper. The rest of the health board never got to see those resumes, not a one.
I guess my memory is similar to what Jessica just mentioned, and it was through attrition that we wound up with just one.
Yeah.
And I think the reason we went that way was because we had gone through in the initial year, the first time we went through, we had the personnel committee And then the next year, we had the same personnel committee and the same recruiter, and we thought that they were providing adequate vetting. And so we decided to go with that process. It was a decision based on experience.
I don't recall the board ever agreeing to them being able to make those decisions without the rest of the board even seeing the resume. The rest of the board, at least me, I never saw one resume. So find me the ruling, the decision, the vote that shows that we agreed to leave it to the personnel committee. It doesn't exist. I never saw a single resume. And I asked Kyle Waterman about that and didn't get a satisfactory answer.
Now we're drag up our things from memory now, but I do recall that we charged the personnel committee with that task. Joe has a comment, maybe his memory's better than mine.
Well, just maybe a little bit more. What happened was the person from Minnesota was to be pushed forward into the process, and that's when he declined. He came back and said, told my boss, and well, I told my wife, I remember the story pretty good. I told my wife and she was shocked, and I told my boss and he matched my pay. And so it never moved.
We don't need to know the details of each applicant. It was, find me the vote that showed that we voted to leave it to the personnel committee and we abrogated our responsibility for looking at those resumes. That action item does not exist.
Andy,
I have a good memory.
no, in 2021, when I was here, I will tell you for a fact, the personnel committee was ready to move a person to the board. And at that point, he decided to back out. There was a person.
I will just be repeating myself to say that we never saw resumes for any of these applicants.
Because they never made it out of the personnel committee to move them to the next step.
I rest my case.
So do I.
All right, so we will weigh your comments in with the selection process the personnel committee is evaluating currently. So thank you for your thoughts on that. With that, I guess we kind of segued into board member discussion. Is there any other topics?
Are these our closing comments?
Yes, would you like to make a comment?
I would. I will be resigning for this board. I'll be sending a letter of resignation to the county commissioners. I'm running for Public Service Commissioner, District 5, and I want to avoid any unforeseen conflict of interest between PSC and this board. It's been a fascinating, enlightening, and gratifying experience, and I'll be expressing in my letter to the county commissioners my gratitude for this appointment.
All right, thank you for your service, Dr. Bukacek.
Thank you. You've been great, Roger.
It's a bit of a surprise. I had something on environmental health and I spaced it out, so I guess it must not be too important.
Septic. You want an update
Oh,
on
do
the
you want to
septic?
give us an update on septic? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, if you don't mind, real quick one.
Yeah.
Artist was our only committee member that made the meeting. We met with the septic pumpers last early last week.
Yeah.
I think it was nice. We have some information and I think it's been shared with, is it just been shared with you? I will get it out to the rest of the board. It took minutes. It was a good meeting. Boy, I'll tell you, it's nice to have Mel Cameron come to the meeting because he really speaks, doesn't he? He just speaks to the whole thing. He just was really good and he really said, hey, we need to go. I lost my property to a McMansion in the North Valley and it's going to continue to happen. There may be some people that feel that they can really hold out, but most of our septic pumpers understand that they're losing their land and we need to move forward with this. So what I'd like to do, since I do such a really great job of summarizing I will ask HDR to come and make just for the make a presentation. That's all. Because I did not do that justice at all. And I'm not afraid to. But, you know, I think it was a good meeting. I think it's, we're moving in the right direction. We actually met with Dave Prunty right after that. So we actually did 2 meetings. Dave was great. We talked about different sites. Before you leave, I need to talk to you about setting up a meeting and things like that. But yeah, Dave was there. We talked a lot. We really need, if this is going to work, that's the nitrogen source, right? The carbon source comes from the brush. That's where we need Dave. Really, we need to really understand how much carbon's out there and what we can do. Because that could be a deal breaker for us. It's what's happening up at the bush. So yeah, thanks. I'm sorry.
Well, thanks for artists for letting remind me that my dimension came through, but mine was, did you hire that consultant to do the reviews on subdivisions?
He has not returned a call to us.
Yeah.
Tell him that. I thought he really wanted, now he won't call us back. So I'm still working.
Well,
on
that
it.
sends a message.
Yeah.
There.
Oh, I'm still working on it.
Don't worry.
Okay, I think I just got what you said.
All right, would take a motion, unless there's any other.
Yes, I have a couple of things real quick. On Monday night, the city of Kalispell had an affordable housing work session. And they had representatives from Senator Daines and Senator Tester's office there. And obviously we have housing issues here, pricing issues, lack of availability, et cetera. And that gets to homelessness, and that affects, you know, what we're dealing with here. So I just wanted to apprise, especially the Behavioral Health Committee, that there is activity going on there. And both Senator Daines and Senator Tester's representatives encouraged Community Action Partnership to reach out. They have lots of issues. You know, there are lots of grants. There's been a lot of money thrown with the COVID pandemic and stuff for housing, and finding its way into the community. There are some roadblocks, and they came to the city to try and solve the problem. And it's really not in the city's purview. It's not even in the county's purview. But those roadblocks can be removed with some congressional involvement. You know, they sometimes can do some tweaking on the administrative level. So I think there are some solutions that can be leveraged there. And then secondly, I wanted to talk about public comment very briefly. And we did receive a couple of written comments. And a couple of things kind of got me. They actually watched our video from February. The video that you may or may not know was actually removed from the ether world by YouTube. It was censored. So a government meeting was censored, and I was incensed. I know some were embarrassed. I was incensed. So I made some phone calls, and within, I don't know, a few hours, Senator Daines' office had that video back online. By 7 o'clock that night, that video was back online. So sometimes you just have to, you know, I spoke up. And so I understand people speaking up. And I will say the tone of today's meeting was encouraging. To the internet written comments that we have where people are expressing fear, I will say I've never felt intimidated. Some here may have, I've never felt intimidated being here. I've been in front of rooms full of angry pilots. I've been in front of angry school officials and angry parents. And I felt more intimidated in some of those meetings than I ever have here. So if anybody is disencouraged to come to a meeting in person, reach out to me and I will escort you into this meeting. If you feel intimidated in any way, I will escort you and sit you down, and I'll have your back. And I think many of the board members here will as well. I want everyone to feel welcome and say what they need to say, and say it again and again, and as loudly as you have to, as long as you're being courteous. And remember, you're addressing the board, not one individual. That's the reminder. You're never addressing one individual. That's how you keep it courteous. So I think we're making progress as a community to get through this and beyond it. But we need those reminders, and I want everybody at the table. And that's First Amendment and Second Amendment. The other thing, the guns don't bother me. We did have people say that we put the signs up down there after intimidating me. That was false. Those signs have been up since probably Sandy Hook or something. And that's beyond anything this council has ever done. Those signs are at the Capitol. And you never know with the concealed carry how many people might be here who could cover your back.
We got your back.
All right, thank you, Rod.
Hey, can I ask,
With that, I'm
can the
gonna.
clock be fixed?
That's a good.
Serious.
You know,
That's 3 meetings, the clock's still not fixed.
Really?
Yeah.
I called out today and I don't have a problem at all with that. Intimidated? Hell no. What I will say is I spent 20 years in front of groups that have things that they want to express to a council or committee or whatever. And it just, you learn. And I have learned over 20 years of listening. And I brought that up last week. If you have the 20 people saying the exact same thing, I don't care who you are. Maybe I'm totally different. I quit listening. I mean, I love comments and I take them to heart, but when you just keep going bang, 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 it just doesn't, it's somebody gave you a script. I don't appreciate that. Today was great. I thought people were very well. I think the only one person called out Joe's name, which was totally inappropriate. But if the public comment continues the way we saw today, I'm all for it. I enjoy listening to people's ideas and what they're bringing forward. But I will stand by my words, you know, and if someone has a problem with the way I will listen to you or I represent you, please use my name for Christ's sake. I mean, you're not going to bother me at all. And I would appreciate it if you just came and talked to me. I'm in the phone book. I'm not only on a cell phone, I'm actually in the phone book.
What is that?
It's a really I want people, I want to interact with people. Like I said, I've been doing this government for 20 years and listening to people. And for some reason, you know, we just had that poor man, and I was embarrassed last week. I thought that it just got so, or last month, it just got so carried away. There again, public meetings are public meetings, and you have to have a level of decorum where it just turns into anarchy, and you can't have that. You know, because we're here to serve those people, not to take abuse, you know, and I love hearing their concerns, but I just want to make that, I mean, please use my name. Don't come up here and say, the person unnamed up there on your board. Say, just look right at me, because I'm gonna look right back at you. And we can talk about it, you know, but I've been doing this a really long time. So I just wanted to clear the air on that.
Thanks.
And there is the link on the agenda. Those are updated about a week ahead of time. So if people are actually interested in what the agenda items are, we usually go through, I know a lot of other council members do go through them ahead of time, read them, look things up, think about what we're going to talk about. So if you don't hear us having a full discussion and being like, what is this? It's because we've already read it, because we got it a week ahead of time and it's on the county website. So if a week before the health board meeting, you guys want to go through the agenda meeting and like see what we're seeing on the screen, we've already had it. So when Janelle sends out the link, I just go through and read the information. So that's maybe part of maybe the disconnect as far as things like the mosquito program, et cetera, because I've already looked at it. I'm growing up in an area right by Old Still Bridge that's covered in mosquitoes. You couldn't even get to your car without running, and then you close the doors and wait for the mosquitoes. You have to kill them all before you can drive anywhere. That has been a godsend as far as, you know, my family's lived there for many generations. So that's just kind of maybe the background that people don't understand.
All right. With that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting and we'll get the clock fixed.